How do you make found footage fresh in the 2020s? Late Night with the Devil found a way through a specific kind of footage, one that feels unique. The taping of a 70s late night talk show that went horribly wrong. By painstakingly recreating that aesthetic, co-directors and writers Colin and Cameron Cairns make it so much easier to buy the concept. It gets rid of the usual questions. Why is someone filming? Why are they still filming? Who exactly found this footage? The format also makes the slow burn more effective. There's less struggle to engage the audience, patiently waiting for the inevitable blood, because you're already watching a show designed to entertain. David Desmalchin, who spent countless hours studying vintage talk show hosts, channels their mannerisms and delivery to bring a genuine and genuinely entertaining performance. It's a fun watch even without the horror, but the promise that it's coming adds a layer of tension, ultimately making the whole thing special. Though to be honest, not that scary, but that's okay. It's still a fun, funny, and spooky affair that I've gladly added to my rotation of annual Halloween viewing. The movie begins with production logos just like any other movie. IFC Films, Shudder, Image Nation Abu Dhabi, Viscreen, and then it looks like the movie starts in claymation. Oh, nope, that's another production logo that just happens to have an intricate lead-in animation. Good Fiend Films, Kinetic or Cinetic, AGC Studios. Now this one has a retro feel, so it must be part of the movie, like a fake intro to the lost tape. Nope. It was real. Then there's Spooky Pictures. How many companies were involved in making this movie? One Take Productions. What? Okay, that last one was fake. But I remember watching this movie in theaters, and there were so many logos, I think the audience thought it was a bit. People actually started laughing. In truth, it's likely just a side effect of being an independent movie. Unlike big studio pictures where one or two major companies foot the bill, smaller movies like this might rely on a bunch of different companies, which all get credit. The real movie begins with a montage painting a picture of the 70s, a mix of real footage and some fictional about a cult dedicated to the demon Abraxas. I'm already on board. I love found footage, I love the late night talk show aesthetic, and I love cults. They make for great horror, and I've always been secretly intrigued by the idea. I just feel like it would give my life real direction and purpose. Hey, if anyone watching this is in a cult with room for another member, let me know in the comments. The montage is accompanied by a deep, documentary-style voiceover, which tells us what we're in for. April 4th, 1971, UBC airs their first episode of the late-night talk show, Night Owl, with Jack Delroy. The host is a popular Chicago radio announcer, but this is his chance to move up in the world of entertainment. The show is a hit, and in 1972, he inks a 5-year deal with UBC. It's quiet, but if you listen closely to this scene, you'll hear a reporter shouting a question.
What did you have to sacrifice to get here tonight?
Jack is supported by his wife, beloved stage actress Madeline Piper, and The Grove, a men's club located in the Redwoods of California, established in the 1800s, frequented by politicians, entertainers, and captains of industry, rumored to practice arcane ceremonies. They hold the power to make and break careers. Despite the support of a wife and an arcane secret society, Delroy still cannot obtain the coveted late-night crown. Ratings go up, but trail behind Carson. September 1976. Tragedy. Madeline, a non-smoker, is diagnosed with terminal lung cancer. In October, she makes a special appearance on the show, huge bump in ratings, most viewed episode of the series, but still a point short of Carson. 2 weeks later, she's dead. It's hard to get a read on Jack's character at this point, partly because his internal motivations are murky and complex. There's no indication Madeline was pressured to be on the show. It seems she's happy to be there to share their memories before the end. But while Jack looks at her with love and care, somewhere behind his eyes you can also sense, boy, this'll be great for ratings. To be fair, it's a bit of a cheat because that feeling mainly comes from the voiceover emphasizing his desperation, but it also comes through in the performance, and we'll see more of it as the show goes on. After that, Jack flees New York and disappears from the media until just 1 month later he makes his return. What's that, by the way? UBC Movie of the Week? Hail Abraxas. They should release that movie as a spin-off. We need more satanic movies. More satanic movies. More satanic movies. Come on, join me. Join me.
Join me.
Upon his grand return, Delroy grows desperate as Carson only pulls further ahead in the ratings. So he and producer Leo Fisk go out of their way to court controversy, but ratings only continue to fall. That brings us to Halloween night 1977, the start of Sweeps Week, a very important time. Sweeps began in 1954 when market research company AC Nielsen distributed TV diaries and asked people to log everything they watched. Then, in a nationwide sweep, they collected the diaries, crunched the numbers, and handed advertisers the most detailed look at local TV audiences they'd ever had. Nielsen actually kept up using those paper diaries, alongside more modern tools, all the way until 2017. Rewinding back to Halloween night 77, that was an important week for Delroy to prove the value of his show, and things did not go well. Per the narrator, a desperate Jack plans an episode he hopes will turn his fortunes around. What you are about to see is the recently discovered master tape of what went to air that night, as well as previously unreleased behind-the-scenes footage.
It is the live TV event that shocked a nation. Late Night with the Devil.
Tonight's Halloween special will feature Christu, a man who can speak to the dead, Carmichael Haig, famed magician and skeptic, Dr. June Ross Mitchell and her patient, the supposedly demon-possessed little girl Lily, who is the subject of Ross Mitchell's new book, Conversations with the Devil. The show starts like any other, playful banter between Jack and his sidekick Gus, topical humor covering everyone from Reggie Jackson to Jimmy Carter. Then it's time for the first of their big Halloween lineup, Christu. If you've seen any talk shows, this will feel very familiar. David Desmalchin, like I mentioned, spent countless hours studying the way talk show hosts talk and move. That included many of them, but the one Colin and Cameron Cairns sent him as reference specifically was Australian talk show host Don Lane. And Jack Delroy is not the only character in this movie based on someone real. The skeptic, Carmichael Haig, is based on real-life magician/skeptic James Randi, who was actually on Don Lane's show and famously clashed with the late-night host.
You give us a lot of lip service about all this stuff that you're going to prove. You go against a lady like Doris Stokes who never harmed anybody in her whole life, and you call her a charlatan and a fake.
You know a great deal about it.
Yes, I do. You said that she was a liar on the radio. You called her a liar.
No.
And that woman wouldn't lie to
I have
anybody.
never
And I don't know
called
whether
the lady
she's
a
right or
liar.
wrong,
I
but
have
she wouldn't
never
lie to
called
anybody.
the
And we're
lady
going
a
for a commercial
fake.
break, and you can pick off. We'll be back with that.
For the actual look of the movie, it wasn't just about getting the sets right, but also operating cameras the way they did 50 years ago. They hired Matthew Temple as director of photography. He was a trainee back in the 80s, meaning his notes from back then were from what the old school 60s and 70s camera guys taught him. According to Colin Cairn, he dug out those old notes and that became the camera crew's Bible on this movie. They even dug out lights that hadn't been used in 30 years from old warehouses to make things as authentic as possible. For the most part, Christu's act plays out the way you'd expect. I'm getting a signal, the letter P, Peter, maybe Peterson. Well, my wife's name was Peterman. Yes, Peterman, exactly. Her spirit is here with us now. She's dead, right? No, but she did leave me for my neighbor 5 years ago. His first attempt is a flop.
There was no Beth or Betty?
Correct.
There was a Betty.
No, you're correct. There was no Beth or Betty.
He gives a stronger performance with a mother and daughter who lost someone 5 years ago, a son, a brother. The word Papa comes to him, and wow, that's what Edmund used to call his teddy bear. Now the show is really picking up, until suddenly, a strong, painful signal. Christu is getting the name Minnie. Does that name mean anything to anybody? He sees an unmarried man with a wedding ring. Who is it? The spirit needs to speak with them, and it's as though if no one accepts the spirit, Christu's mind will explode. His eyes roll in the back of his head, and he collapses as the studio lights go out for a moment. Now the spirit is gone. Cut to commercial. But not for us. This is where we get to see that newly discovered behind-the-scenes footage, captured in black and white. In it, we find out Gus is worried. Rumors are swirling of a surprise Jack has cooked up for later in the show. Gus saw restraints and knives. Jack reassures everything's fine. In terms of pacing, the movie has to be careful, because if things go too crazy too soon, it's no longer believable the cameras would still be rolling, and so far, a lot of this can be written off as trickery. Even Jack himself assumes the flickering lights was his producer's doing. The authenticity is important because the tension comes from knowing danger is coming to a place that feels relatively real. Even better if that space is populated by characters we like, so we fear any harm coming their way. And as much as Jack has shown some tendency toward exploitation, it doesn't feel like it comes from an evil place, more of a desperate place, something easier to empathize with. On top of that, he's just fun and charming. So is Gus, who has a layer of purity beyond Jack, as he raises red flags early and often. I love these characters, the fun interplay between them, even Christu, the way he moves and speaks over-dramatically, but plays it all with a straight face. That sort of dry humor is my favorite kind, so the movie is funny, feels authentic, you like the characters, and you don't want awful things to happen to them, but the promise has been made. Awful things will happen, so you can't look away. Is Christu the real deal? After returning from commercial break, Jack explores that question with help from once magician Carmichael the Conjurer, now leading skeptic Mr. Carmichael Haig. His organization dedicates themselves to testing potential genuine psi phenomena to see what's real and what's merely trickery. So far, all they've found is tricks, and Carmichael is so confident that's all they'll find, he always carries a $100,000 check, ready to sign to anyone who can show him something real. I love the Carmichael character, and Ian Bliss was perfect casting. Apparently someone else was supposed to play the character, but had to drop out a few days before filming, so Bliss, who was set for a smaller role, moved into this one. He plays the character with such authority that although he can be insulting and rude, he also has credibility. That creates two sources of tension. One comedic, by putting him next to over-the-top characters like Christu, who clash with his skepticism. And the more frightening tension, what'll happen when this staunch non-believer has to face whatever awful thing we know is coming? Carmichael explains how Christu might have faked his act. As Christu storms off, Jack stops him and reveals something. During Christu's episode earlier, when he was looking for someone to accept the spiritual visitor Minnie, well, Minnie was Jack's private nickname for his wife, and he still wears the ring. Like Christu said, he sees an unmarried man with a wedding ring, so it seems that powerful presence earlier was Jack's wife, reaching out from beyond the grave. After the revelation, Christu projectile vomits black fluid onto Carmichael, so the crew walk him off set. Cut to break, which means more behind-the-scenes stuff. Great example of the humor in this movie. If someone is going to get projectile vomited on, the most hilarious target is Carmichael. And good news from producer Fisk. People are calling in after that last segment, angry and confused. Can't be bad for ratings. I have to admit, the movie does stretch credulity at times with this behind-the-scenes footage. A lot of it captures Jack and Leo at their worst, giggling like schoolgirls over all the controversy they're courting with the show and what that'll do for ratings. Even if you buy that there's a sort of documentary crew capturing stuff between the live segments, it's hard to buy Jack would allow some of these conversations to happen in front of those cameras. Does it stretch authenticity too far? I enjoy the movie enough to get hypnotized by it and let it go, but it might be too far for some. Returning from break, Carmichael explains to the audience that what they just saw was an old vaudeville routine. Spouting, or controlled regurgitation, something I've been practicing myself. Become a member for that and more Too Hot for Monetization content. As Jack prepares to welcome his next guest, he pauses for a siren going by. An ambulance for poor Christu. And poor me. I can relate to this. I used to live by a hospital, so while recording, I'd have to stop literally every 2 to 3 minutes while sirens went by, then cut around it all in post. But it's impossible to get them all, and if you listen back to my old recordings and listen close, you can hear a subtle bed of sirens beneath it all. The next guest is Dr. June Ross Mitchell, parapsychologist, and her patient, the supposedly demon-possessed Lily. But first, a clip explaining their history. Meet Xander Diabo, founder and leader of the infamous First Church of Abraxas. Stories spread of kidnapping, firearm offenses, children bred for human sacrifice, and the spilling of blood. In August 74, the FBI lays siege to the house, and after a 3-day standoff, Diabo commands his followers to douse the house and themselves in gasoline. There's only one survivor out of the flames, the 10-year-old Lily. Was she lucky, or was her survival part of Diabo's wicked plan? Her memory of her time in the house is fractured and incomplete. So the FBI turned to June's Psi Research Center. Demonic possession, or what us professionals call psychic infestation. What an awesome phrase, and a small example of the movie's feeling of authenticity. Between the found footage aesthetic and the doctor using phrases like parapsychologist and psychic infestation, I'm totally bought into the world and can't wait to see what it has to show us. I also love when science meets magic, like in Ironheart. What, Ironheart, when she had to borrow dark magic from Dormammu's dimension? Never mind. Lily is all smiles in the interview, and has good news for Jack.
And you needn't worry about your TV show. I think you're going to be very famous soon.
During the break, a strange moment where Lily sounds less like herself and more like Jack's deceased wife.
Time to make ourselves pretty again.
Don't I already look pretty, Jack?
You're good.
It also becomes obvious that Jack and June are more than just acquaintances, and even more than friends. Perhaps that's why she acquiesces to his pressure to press on with the show, despite June's concerns over Lily. Yesterday, she went into a fugue state and kept repeating Jack's name, like she was trying to remember something. Also, Christou apparently died on the way to the hospital. Back to the show. During the interview, June shares info about Lily's condition. They don't think she's possessed by Abraxas, but by one of the minor deities said to serve him. Lily calls him Mr. Wriggles because of the way he wriggles inside her head, which immediately makes me think of The Exorcist, where Regan called her new friend Captain Howdy before finding out it's a demon. Carmichael is, of course, quite skeptical. But Jack has an idea. Why not speak to Mr. Wriggles right here in the studio? It takes some pressure from Jack and the audience, but June acquiesces again. Stay tuned for a live television first.
As we attempt to commune with the devil. But not before a word from our sponsors.
If you want to sum up the satire of this movie, I think it's all captured in that line. If the devil is real, then communing with him is the most serious and dangerous thing you can do. So to follow that with, but first, have you played Raid Shadow Legends? It's hilarious and with something to say behind it about exploitation and how far the desperation for fame and fortune can push someone. And that's not the only thing that pressures someone. June, a PhD who seems to truly care about her patient, crumbles under the pressure of a public audience, punctuated by pressure from someone she's close with. We don't know the exact nature of their relationship, but either way, it speaks to the push-pull of emotions that drive someone to do something so irresponsible. The push of pressure from a large audience, or someone you're romantically entangled with. The pull, promises of fame, fortune, and legacy. By the way, in terms of reading Jack's character, this whole thing might be a bit more forgivable if the idea to speak with the devil on live TV came about suddenly, like he got caught up in the moment. But earlier, Gus said he saw restraints backstage. They're about to use those restraints on Lily as a safety measure for their communion. So if Jack had them ready, that means he had the idea going in. He didn't tell his sidekick Gus about it, and worst of all, didn't tell June, but instead sprung it on her tonight, as if it was a spontaneous idea, like he did get caught up in the moment. Probably because he knew if he asked in advance, she would have refused. The demonstration goes remarkably well. June asks Lily to let herself sleep, and moments later, her Regan from The Exorcist-like appearance makes it clear the demon has taken her place. It says something strange. Good to see you again, Jack, and reminds him we met amongst the tall trees. She taunts him over Minnie. The worms finished her off a long time ago. And then for his obvious relationship with June.
Jack and June went up the hill to fuck each other's brains out.
Any doubters are quieted when Lily levitates. Wait, is that why this keeps happening?
I'm possessed by a demon?
Once she lands, the demon is seemingly gone and Lily is back. Honestly, I found this sequence a little disappointing. The movie overall is so unique, and I was hoping that would carry into this sequence, especially since it felt like it was going to start delivering on what had been a slow burn up to this point. But instead, it's pretty generic. Lily's face looks a little messed up, and she talks like this. Even the voice part sounded weird because you hear two voices at once, the demon and Lily, but Lily's voice cuts through so strongly, it comes across as goofy. There is one jump scare that caught me off guard though, which is basically the only jump scare in the movie. I'm gonna play that now, so brace yourself.
You know I can't help it.
I know. I never.
It's somewhat interesting when the demon implies he and Jack have met before, but also not that surprising. The opening of the movie told us about his association with the Grove, so we're waiting for the full reveal on what Jack has to do with all this demonic stuff. Also interesting, there's a sort of electricity effect before she starts levitating, implying a vague interaction between the supernatural and technological, which I think comes into play later, kind of like in Ironheart. Jack could not be happier with how that segment went. Maybe June and Lily could even come back for a regular spot on the show. Gus is freaked out. 3 of the crew members have walked off. Even Carmichael at least raises an eye when he finds out Christu is dead. Bottom line, this is the biggest TV event since the moon landing, only this one is real and not directed by Stanley Kubrick. What's Carmichael's explanation for what the audience witnessed? I mean, they saw the chair levitate for Abraxas's sake. Well, Carmichael has an answer. He'll show how it was done. He just needs a volunteer.
Thank you, Gus.
Over the next few minutes, the audience witnesses something terrible. Worms crawling out of a hole in Gus's neck, his stomach, and a giant worm that crawls out of a crater where his eye used to be. Or did they? No, it was simply hypnosis. Carmichael taking advantage of your suggestibility to make us, you, all see something awful. I didn't see a thing. I'm not suggestible at all. I cannot be suggested, but my videos can. YouTube algorithm, I hope you're listening. I love this sequence. In a way, the underwhelming communion with the devil works to the advantage of this sequence by making it more unsettling by comparison. Where I was hoping for a unique spin on talking to a demon but was left disappointed, this scene was a unique spin on a hypnosis scene. Unlike a traditional sequence, the hypnosis isn't used on one character, but an entire audience, us included. I often hate hypnotism scenes because they can feel like a cheat, an easy way to advance the plot or pull out a character revelation. But here, it's the opposite. It's essentially a character attempting to regress the plot, trying to tell us that what we just saw, the supernatural escalation, wasn't real. For me, it was also the scariest part of the movie. I was not expecting to delve into body horror, so the worms were unexpected, and it was happening to Gus, such a fun, good-natured character who is already nervous about how the night is going. You know it's all hypnosis, but you also know things are supposed to go wrong at some point, so you aren't sure if this is the moment. There's even the momentary fake out where Carmichael can't snap Gus out of it until you realize that's just more of his act. The audience is skeptical. No way they were all hypnotized. That's when Jack gets an idea. If what Carmichael says is true, then if they play back the tape, they should see plain as day. No worms, nothing strange of any kind, just Gus acting funny under the influence of a talented hypnotist. It's a small moment, but the bashful way David says,
"That is not the way I remember it,"
is great acting. He seems genuinely embarrassed over falling for the hypnosis. But here's the thing. Carmichael proved to the audience that they can be made to see things that aren't there. But that doesn't mean June did the same thing with the demonic possession. And there's an easy way to prove it, Lily suggests. Just play the tape back from that part of the night. Will we see a demon-possessed Lily, or just a girl acting funny under hypnosis? Unfortunately, there's no time. Miss Cleo James is up next to play them out with a bewitching jazz medley. No, that's not fair, Jack decides. Everyone is dying to see what's on that tape. Worth noting, June is against the idea until Lily begs her. We want everyone to know the truth, don't we, June? I assume this is the demon's influence. So, what is on the tape? Hypnotic suggestion? Some other trick? No, just a girl possessed by a demon. And something else pops on screen for a second. Jack asks them to go frame by frame, and they see her, the apparition of his wife, with her hand on his shoulder. For a moment, we see that hand live, too, on Jack's close-up. This is when everything goes to hell. Lily starts acting weird as electricity emanates from her. The studio lights go crazy, and Lily's head splits open, showing the demonic force inside her. Gus makes a feeble attempt at an exorcism using the crucifix from around his neck, and ends up with his head turned around the wrong way. June gets her throat cut open by the necklace around her neck. Carmichael, finally meeting a real demon, does the only natural or unnatural thing and pledges allegiance to it, earning a slow, torturous death by melting. I love Carmichael's immediate reaction. He's the logical, skeptical one, so you expect he'll always look for the most rational path. Now he sees a demon he couldn't possibly defeat or escape. So without a moment's hesitation, Lord of Flies, God of ungodliness, I solemnly promise to worship and obey thee and perform thy unholy bidding. When that fails... More of that dry humor, treating the insane or absurd as mundane. Along those lines, his last best attempt is to follow through on a promise. He's now seen proof of the supernatural, so he whips out that check, and the demon is apparently uninterested in the money. As for Jack Delroy, the demon sends him on a trip down memory lane. Reruns, if you will. He's suddenly back on set for previous episode, but things feel off. The worm from Gus's head even makes an appearance. Jack begs the viewers at home, "Stop watching this." But we won't do that, Jack. We're going to see all your dirty little secrets. Yes, let's go back to when he signed the 5-year deal with UBC. The reporter asking, "What did you have to sacrifice to get here tonight?" Station owner Walker Bedford announces, "Oh, Jack Delroy's greatest sacrifice is yet to come." We see his participation in a ritual with the Church of Abraxas. He drinks what they hand him, then finds his wife on a deathbed. A memory, maybe a ghost. She makes it all clear. Whether knowingly or not, Jack made a deal with that church to be number one, but he'd have to pay a price. That price turned out to be Minnie. Now they own his soul. Jack claims it wasn't supposed to turn out this way. He still loves her. Then she asks for one last favor, to end her pain. He stabs her in the chest, only to wake up back in the studio having stabbed Lily. That is how Delroy's story ends. On stage, joined only by corpses. Lily, Carmichael, June, Gus, all dead. It seems Lily was right.
I think you're going to be very famous soon.
With a show like that, aired live on Halloween night, how could he not be famous? Some of this is left up to interpretation, but the basics are clear. Jack Delroy made some kind of deal at the Grove to become famous. The cost was the life of his wife, and like the monkey's paw, he does get that fame, but not in the way he expected, unless he thought it'd be by murdering a little girl on TV after a demon slaughters everyone around him. Some questions. Did Jack know the cost of whatever deal he made? He says to his wife, "It wasn't supposed to turn out this way. You have to believe me." If you take him at his word, that implies he didn't know the cost of the deal. Or maybe he did, but thought he could worm his way out of actually footing the bill. Here's what DeSmulchin said about it to the Wrap. "I absolutely don't believe that he consciously chose this. And this is the power of the unconscious, the power of what we open ourselves to and gravitate towards when we are not steering our own ships. Jack is a man who is dealing with overwhelming unprocessed trauma, grief, work, addiction, alcoholism, and his mind is on the fray. And he is not doing the work and not getting the help to heal what is ultimately really broken inside of him. I believe, although not with ill intent, that he has opened a doorway to something that is much bigger, much more dangerous, and much darker than he could have ever imagined." So the details are vague, but either way, it feeds into that theme, how desperation and the other broken parts of us can make us do things we'd like to believe are against our nature, things that might even hurt other people. Another question, what's the point of Jack stabbing his wife, but really stabbing Lily? I think that was just the hallucination the demon used to trick Jack into killing Lily on live TV. And the whole reason the demon possessed her, I think, was to collect on that debt. So with the slaughter of Jack's co-hosts and guests, all that remained was for Jack to commit murder. At that point, the demon no longer required a vessel, it was done with Lily, and could return to hell. And one more question. Is it cheating that this is a found footage movie, yet somehow we're meant to believe all this surreal stuff ended up on tape? It is a bit of a cheat, but you can argue that the demon actually manifested this stuff in a way that it could be filmed. We saw the electricity earlier with Lily floating, and when the demon actually appears, there's a lot of electricity again, implying interaction with all the technology. Maybe imprinting this stuff on tape will help the demon spread its evil? Sure, why not? Personally, I don't hate the ending, but I also don't love it. It feels a bit uncreative, again after such a creative lead-up. So what happens at the end? A demon kills everybody, and then a few minutes of essentially explaining to us that it's all Jack's fault, in a way that feels a little bit inorganic, like the demon sent him on the surreal trip down memory lane more for our benefit than his. Maybe it'd work better for me if the whole thing felt more viciously mocking, like throwing it in Jack's face. Then it would feel less like exposition explaining the hidden backstory, and more like the demon's final blow. All that said, this movie is much more about the journey than the destination. The secret ingredient is the vibe, the feeling that you're genuinely watching a rediscovered tape from the 70s where a bunch of weird stuff happened. It's a lot of fun, and like I said, it is officially part of my annual Halloween viewing.